People are still motivated by what happened 2 years ago almost. It's like this is really what lifting people in the street.
Yes, I mean, but the people, unlike January 25th, when there was a fair amount of unity, of course there was some group that was supporting Mubarak then, but now there is a huge split between two large groups, the Islamists, who are supporting Morsi in a big way and are willing to go down in the street to protect him, and the secularists or the liberals, the youth, who are opposing him and are also willing to go down in the street to protest him. And these are very large groups. And so there's a potential of clash, big clashes between them if they turn out in the street at the same time. I mean, right now there is this demonstration they're called the Last Warning Million Man March, which is partly in front of the presidential palace and partly in front of Tahrir Square. And so right now the police has pulled out completely and they have free reign in the street. Just this past Saturday, the Islamists had their own million-person demonstration, which was in front of Cairo University, and it was huge. And then they went on and surrounded the Constitutional Court and prevented the judges from the Constitutional Court to meet in order to deliver their ruling about the Constituent Assembly. So it's a very explosive situation. And if it continues, it could lead to some major clashes, and I think that's Morsi playing with fire here.
Is he Morsi running this show, or someone else behind Morsi?
It's the Supreme Guidance Council of the Muslim Brotherhood that's running the show. Basically, wait people out, and if they get the constitution out very fast, then the whole point will be moot, and there will be nothing to complain about. So that's what they're trying to do now. They've accelerated the constitution writing process, and they thought this would diffuse the anger, but in fact it has only increased it. But I do think that he's hoping to wait all this out, to let people get all their energy out now, and he will just basically run up the clock until the referendum is done on December 14th, and then he can say, well, I no longer have dictatorial power, the constitution is now in effect, and my constitutional declaration is moot. However, there are key challenges. One challenge, for example, is the fact that judges have to supervise the referendum, and so far the judges have refused to do so, or at least a large fraction of them has refused to do so. So in order to get around this, he will have to come up with another constitutional declaration to declare that somebody other than the judges can supervise the referendum. And that right now he's making the rules as he goes. He's making them up.
How Egyptians usually have a dialogue?
Well, you know that emotions are very high right now, and so shouting is part of the way Egyptians usually express themselves. Thank God that so far there hasn't been a huge amount of violence.
Morsi has any rights whatsoever as an first elected president in Egyptian history? Doesn't he have any right to run this country? And
presidents have become dictators, Hitler being one of them. So being elected doesn't give you the right to abolish all kinds of review of any of your actions. And I think this is what people are saying, is that yes, he has the right to run the country, but he doesn't have the right to run roughshod over the law.
All those judges and court and all that during the last 60 years?
The courts did make some very courageous decisions during Mubarak's time. They couldn't, of course, disqualify the entire regime, but they did in several occasions disqualify the elections of the People's Assembly. They did make some rulings that were quite independent from the Mubarak regime. So I think to claim that the judiciary is entirely in the pockets of the Mubarak regime is really inaccurate. That's not true at all. Some judges clearly were, as some judges now are in the pocket of Morsi.
What is the role of military this time?
Well, the military has decided to be completely on the sidelines right now. So they have vowed not to intervene, and the top people in the military made their own deal with Morsi. They essentially made a deal that they will let him become president. In return, he does not put them on trial, and they can keep their millions. And these top people have now retired, and they're quite happy being in retirement with their millions intact. But it was a deal, and he lived by his side of the deal, so they're going to live by theirs. The rest of the military right now is not interested in getting involved in politics again, and so they're basically sitting on the sideline.
What are the scenarios there? Give me the best, most optimistic one and the most pessimistic one.
Well, I think the most optimistic scenario is for Mr. Morsi to back down and to basically accept the fact that the constitution writing process was flawed because it only represented one dominant current and not all the other currents. And then we would, however, that's not a likely scenario. I don't think he's going to back down. The most likely scenario is that he's going to basically wait the demonstrations out. He's going to try and get the referendum organized on the 14th of December, and he's going to claim a new set of legitimacy based on the results of that referendum. The referendum is going to be boycotted by all the opposition, and so he's going to win it, and he's going to claim new legitimacy based on those results. But there's going to be continued unrest. I mean, whether the opposition is going to maintain this level of energy over the next few weeks, I don't know. I don't think so. But it's going to be a very contentious beginning for the so-called New Egypt.
Can he run the country without the street? I mean, without half the street, let's say that.
Well, it really depends on the level of energy that the street can maintain. You cannot maintain that kind of energy indefinitely. And so if he is able, if they're not able to basically increase the pace of activity, maybe have a national strike, and that kind of thing, if they're not able to organize more than simply demonstrations, eventually the energy will run out.
It's amazing in the last 12 months, the last 24 months, Egypt has been sliced and diced in so many different ways.
That's right, but this particular set of events has managed to unify each of the two slices, if you want. The Islamists, they have been unified between the Salafis and the Muslim Brotherhood on one side, and the secularist liberals have been unified between left, right, liberal, various shades of socialist. They have been unified by this event. So right now we have two big camps, which may start to bicker again among each other if once this passes. But right now these are the two main slices.
Is this a fight about the future of Egypt, or what is the identity, as they say, al-Hawiyya?
The identity of Egypt. Whether it's going to be whether it's going to be a kind of an Islamist state versus a civic democratic state, and right now people assume that the Islamists have the upper hand, and that's what we're going to get. But the other side is actually fighting back pretty strongly.
Morsi, the Brotherhood, in a way, they were the product of Jan 21st revolution. So
No, they were not. No, I would disagree with you on that. They were waiting. They were waiting on the sidelines, and they took advantage of the political vacuum after January 25th to basically take over power. But they had been waiting on the sidelines for a long time, ready to pounce on any change that would bring them to power. They were not a product of that revolution. They were
about the Egyptian now that you can disagree. You cannot just disagree with an idea.
Well, look, this is not an idea. This is an action, an actual action of somebody saying, I am above the law. If Obama today came and said, I'm going to cancel the Supreme Court, they have no right over me, over my decisions, I can make any decisions I want, there is no Congress, there is no Senate, and Obama becomes the sole decision maker, you think the Americans would stay quiet about it?
Well, if we had a revolution here, I'm sure a lot of people will
not
find that this is kuffar. Anybody disagree with Morsi is kafir, and anybody who support Morsi is backward. There's no debate of ideas. It's just debate of almost tribal. After a revolution, this is what we get.
Yeah, no, I think what you have is political factions that are trying to overstretch to get as much advantage as possible from the vacuum that occurs after a revolution. A revolution destroys a regime, it doesn't build one. And so in the interim, until another regime is built, a lot of political factions try to maneuver to get as much power as possible. And in this case, the Muslim Brotherhood managed to capture a lot of power because they made a deal with the military. So it's a pretty rational story, a rational narrative.
And Mubarak did and failed. I mean, you cannot bank against the street. Obviously, this is really what the biggest mistake that Morsi is making. You cannot bank against the street. You know, Mubarak has the military and America and NATO, and it still failed. So
yeah, but this calculation that Morsi made, both Morsi and Field Marshal Tantawi made, is that they thought they were the only two major players during the last 2 years. And if they can come with an accommodation together, then the rest are not important. And what Morsi is realizing now is that no, the military is not the only major player. There is the street that is opposed to him that is very important.
I mean, I'm surprised that's the line of thinking, because it was very clear that the street defeated Mubarak and the military and the police.
That's right. But when you when you listen to what the military people were saying, they were basically saying, we cannot talk to those rabble-rousers. We don't know who they are. We don't know their leadership. The only people we can see are the Muslim Brotherhood. They're the only ones we can come up with an accommodation with, because they're the only ones that are organized. Whereas all the others were not organized, so we can't talk to them. And so,
well, I mean, I know you're busy and you have a country to save here, but do you think this is another revolution, second, third?
It's hard to say. We're right in the middle of it. It can peter out by tomorrow or the day after, and nothing, and then we will forget about it, or it can build up from this point onwards, and it's very hard to say from this vantage point.
What do the Egyptians think of the role of America this time?
Well, I mean, I think people here tend to always exaggerate the role of America. They think America is manipulating things in the background and is responsible for everything. I completely disagree with that. I think that just as the Americans were praising Morsi for his actions in Gaza, he does something like this, and then they're confused again and don't know how to react. Mm-hmm. So I think that I don't subscribe to kind of this view that the role of it's the driving force behind all of this. It is one player, and probably right now not the most important player.
Well, obviously you're busy here. Well, thank you so much.
bum bum.